Hey y'all, I wanted to share more about my appendectomy story from last week. So I flew into the Valley last Tuesday afternoon, and we are doing a project down there, and the Valley is what we call the Rio Grande Valley, which is the border of Mexico and Texas. I ended up flying in the afternoon and met up with some of our subcontractors to go over what we were going to be working on the next few days, and then I got back to my hotel, checked in and everything. So I ended up getting dinner that night, and which is funny because I actually got dinner at Walk-On's, which is Drew Brees' restaurant. If you knew that, I didn't know that, so that was kind of funny. When I walked in, I was like, hey, Drew Brees, what are you doing here? He wasn't actually there, but he was on the wall. So anyway, got dinner, went back to my hotel, and was relaxing, and I started to feel not so great, had some pain, and I just kind of was like, okay, something was wrong with the food, whatever. So I ended up just showering, getting ready for bed, and just chilling out before I ended up actually going to bed. The pain never went away. I started to feel a little bit more nauseous as time went on, and I just drank water, just hoping that it would pass. Maybe I would go to the bathroom or something, but that didn't happen. I tried to throw up. It didn't really work. So I just waited a little bit longer, got in bed, drank some more water. Probably around 11:30, I ended up starting to throw up, and I just never stopped throwing up. So I texted my coworker at around 2 o'clock in the morning, and we were supposed to get breakfast before our meeting and before our day started, and that did not work out. Sorry about the dogs. So I texted my coworker and just let him know that I was throwing up and it was probably food poisoning, so I just needed to, sleep for a little bit longer, and if we could push back breakfast. I just kept throwing up. I just had a lot of pain, and it just never went away. At this point in time, I had thrown up maybe at least 5 or 6 times, and I could not hold down even water. I mean, at this point, I was just vomiting bile, and if you've experienced that, it's pretty horrible, and just not a good feeling at all. And I tried to sleep it off. That didn't work. The pain was just too great that I couldn't focus. As soon as I drank water, probably 5 minutes later, I would have to run to the bathroom and throw up. So things were not super great, and I still attributed it to food poisoning because I didn't even think about, oh, this could be my appendix, or this could be, gallbladder, anything. I was like, nah, like this is just really bad food poisoning, which is stupid, but it's like I didn't have any other frame of reference or anything. So I ended up throwing up some more, and then I called my mom around 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was like, Mom, what do I do? And she's like, you should probably go to urgent care. Well, they don't really have urgent cares that are open 24 hours in the Valley or in Texas in general. So the choices were either the hospital or go to a standalone ER, which is very common here. So I actually called my PCP in Indy because I don't have a PCP here yet. So I called them, and I ended up talking to a nurse, and she rattled off a bunch of questions. Do you have this? Is this happening? All that kind of stuff. And in conclusion, she basically said, hey, you need to go to the ER or you need to go to urgent care, because if you can't stop throwing up, then you need to get fluids to make yourself stop throwing up. Something is wrong. I just don't know what it is. It could be a number of things. And so I ended up deciding at probably 5 in the morning, after throwing up for several hours. And at this point, I think I had thrown up maybe 15 times, maybe more than that. I don't know, I actually lost count. So I drove myself to a standalone ER, which is part of a regional hospital down in the Valley. Thankfully, since it was 5 in the morning, there was no one really on the road, so that was really nice. But at this point, I had blurry vision. So yeah, that was not so great, but I was not gonna call an ambulance at all to come pick me up because, are you serious? So I could drive, barely, and I got there and I checked in. Thankfully, there was no one there. It was just the nurses and the doctors, so I was very grateful for that, and there was no line or anything. I got to the ER, and I got in really quick, and they started doing my vitals, and I actually ended up throwing up while they're asking me a bunch of questions and while I was signing in. So they could tell that, you know, this is something is not right here. I got back to a room and they started giving me morphine and giving me fluids and doing all the paperwork and everything. And the doctor said, we don't want to do a CAT scan yet. We want to see how the morphine is taking or how you're reacting to it and just kind of see what happens. So they probably waited about an hour or two before the doctor came back in and said we needed to do a CAT scan, because at that point in time, if it was something simple, then the morphine would have worked to take away the pain, and the fluids would have worked and made me stop throwing up and stop giving me nausea, and none of that stuff worked, and it didn't honestly make me feel better at all. I still felt terrible. Pretty miserable actually, laying in bed. I was so uncomfortable. Nothing was helping. My body temperature was freaking out. I mean, one minute I was super cold, the other I was super hot, and I was just, you know, you can imagine all the fun things that happened. Eventually took me back to get a CAT scan. That was not great either. A CAT scan is super non-invasive, but it's, I was just really uncomfortable and just, again, super miserable. So I ended up having to wait for the results for an hour, but the doctor came in and said, hey, I'm really glad we did a CAT scan because you have appendicitis. And I literally go, are you freaking kidding? And he was like, no. He was like, yeah, you definitely have appendicitis and we need to get you to the hospital so they can take it out. And I said, oh my freaking goodness. And the doctor was very kind. All the nurses and doctors that I interacted with during my trip there were super nice, super helpful, very patient. I was very grateful, honestly, to be there and to work with them. So at that point in time, I needed to get to the hospital, and they actually did not give me the option to be transported by a friend or the ambulance. They were just like, we got to get you to the hospital like right now. So they called an ambulance and they got there about an hour later. And I do wish that they would have asked, because at that point in time, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 in the morning, and where I could have had a coworker come get me and take me to the hospital. So I would have, you know, probably saved a lot of money, but at this point, whatever. And I was so miserable, I didn't really care. And I didn't even think to ask, to be honest. So I got transported to the hospital through an ambulance, and the paramedics were super kind as well. Got to the hospital, got taken up to a room to prep for surgery. I don't know at this point how long everything took. I know the doctor said that it took about, the surgery was going to take an hour and a half-ish. So that's really the only form of reference I have at this time. And I think the surgery happened after lunch, maybe like 1 or 2. Other than that, I have no idea what time everything was, to be honest. I didn't have my watch, or my phone was in my purse, so who knows what time it was and how long all this stuff took. So, but I got into surgery pretty quick, and it was successful. Thankfully, my appendix was not ruptured. It was just severely inflamed, so it was ready to go. But it wasn't as bad as it probably could have been, so I'm really grateful for that. I ended up getting wheeled up to my room, and yeah, just got a lot of drugs. Everything was pretty smooth sailing from then on. I actually flew back to Austin on Saturday. I actually stayed a day longer than what was originally planned, because I had a flight on Friday, but I just didn't feel well enough to go, and I had thrown up earlier that day, and so the doctor didn't feel super comfortable with me flying. Obviously, I probably would have been miserable, and who knows how things would have gone had I flown. And I felt a lot more prepared to fly on Saturday, so I'm grateful that they let me stay a day longer. There were a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes with my coworkers. I was very, very grateful for them. Again, this is a work trip. I was not home. I was about 6 hours away from my apartment. So I had a lot of support that I didn't even know that I had, to be honest. My phone was blowing up this entire time. And because I barely talked to anyone while I was at the ER. There were a few people that I texted, but overall, I didn't let anyone know. And one, I was miserable. I didn't want to be on my phone, and I didn't really want to talk to a lot of people. And so, yeah, this whole time I'm alone. Like, I'm alone. I have probably 2 or 3 coworkers that are in town. And I know, some people there, but overall, I don't know anyone. And so it was hard being away from Austin, but at the same time, I don't know a lot of people here in Austin either. So it really didn't feel that much different had I been either in Austin or the Valley. So yeah, I have a few friends here, but I don't have like a core group of friends yet. So I felt a lot of support even virtually. I had one coworker that came to visit me pretty much every day, which I was really grateful for, just to have that interaction and someone that I actually knew. So I was really grateful for that. And there was a lot of stuff that one of my other coworkers did behind the scenes. He was a huge advocate for me. He called the nurses every day, made sure I was getting the proper medication. And the reason why he did this was because his wife was a child life specialist. And so they definitely understand the need for advocacy, especially if you're alone in the hospital. And I was alone for a number of reasons. One, because of COVID. And 2, I was traveling and I don't have anyone here, obviously, with me. Having that support, and my company was able to change my flight from Friday to Saturday. Yeah, I was just really grateful because doing all this stuff alone is scary, but I never felt like I was alone. I may have been physically alone, but not emotionally alone. So super grateful. But yeah, it was just really crazy. And I know that you can't really get a full picture of all the things that have happened just by me telling it, but it was pretty wild. At the end of the day, the advice that I would give, and no one asked for advice, but I'm just gonna, tell from experience all the things that I noticed and kind of observed while I was going through all of this was, 1, you should work for a company that will advocate for you and that will fight for you. And find coworkers that do that as well. I think the relationships that I've formed since I've been at this company and since I've been in Texas has really made a difference because I didn't know that I needed the support while I was there, to be honest. But these people and these guys, pretty much all men, I work with all men mostly. I work in construction, so just a reminder. I had a lot of support and I'm really, really grateful for them. And I didn't even know that I had all the support until this happened. And I know that they care about me. I know that, they like working with me, but you just never really understand how much people care for you until you need advocacy and until you are in an emergency like this. So very, very grateful to work for a company that has people like this working with me, and I'm really grateful for people that reached out to make sure I was okay. Yeah, I think too, when it comes to your health, I think that you really need to listen to your body. I actually should have gone to the ER hours before, not waiting until it started at 11:30 and lasted until about, I went to the ER at 5 in the morning. So, and I probably should have gone around maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, but I was so stubborn and I knew it was gonna cost a lot of money, but I just didn't wanna go. I didn't wanna go. But probably the 10th time I'm throwing up and I'm still throwing up. Probably should have gone somewhere to do something about it, but I was just whatever, it's gonna pass. It's food poisoning, because I've had really bad food poisoning before, but it hasn't lasted that long. So, and I never thought that it would be appendicitis, ever. And if you saw my Instagram, I definitely didn't think that this would ever happen, because in my mind, I was like, this just this is just not something I'm gonna have to deal with, so I don't need to worry about it. I don't even need to think about it. That's why appendicitis never even occurred to me that this could be the issue. So joke's on me, right? Whatever, it's fine. So now I have 3 wounds that I'm trying to heal quickly. But yeah, I just wanted to share that story and advocate for yourself. Work for a company that will advocate for you too and that cares about their employees, and work with good people. I think that's super important, and work with people that care about the person, not just the business. That's also really important. And just a reminder, I work in construction. I work with pretty much all men, especially in Texas. And also take care of your health. Take care of yourself. Get regular doctor visits. Not that I haven't, because I have. I actually had a physical probably 2 months ago, and nothing was wrong then, obviously. And you know, this is emergency surgery, so if your appendix isn't bothering you, then it probably doesn't need to be taken out. But if your body is telling you that something is wrong, get it checked out, go to the hospital, go to a doctor, go to an urgent care, do what you need to do and take care of yourself, because if you don't, something worse could happen than just appendicitis. So just wanted to make sure I tell you guys that. So that's my story, and that's what happened last week. Very thrilling, very exciting, to say the least. Did not expect that, but the Lord is using it for a lot of good, so I'm really grateful for that. Also, not really excited to see my medical bills. I'm really praying that they're not going to be as high as I thought they would be, because I think they're going to be pretty high, but I'm hoping that my insurance is a lot better than I think it is. So we shall see.